Welcome to today's Around the WaterCooler discussion. The discussion today is all around getting the best out of hybrid working environments for the SME. And to do that today, I'm joined by three experts, so thank you for your time. We've got Wynand, we've got Danette and David. If you could each introduce yourselves so the audience knows who we've got joining us on today's panel. David, if I start with you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my name's David Threlfall. I'm the CIO for a company called Britishvolt. And Britishvolt are a company who will be the first gigafactory in the UK, designing and manufacturing batteries for primarily the electric vehicle industry.
Danette, could you introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Danette Copestake and it's a pleasure to be here today. I am the IT director of Wyelands Bank. I've been at Wyelands since December and we've been on a bit of a roller coaster, but it's been interesting times. So yeah, a big advocate of women in technology and also innovative ways of working. So this is a great forum to discuss hybrid working.
And joining in that third lockdown, I'm sure that kind of you have had to be innovative in terms of building team atmosphere and camaraderie. So that could be interesting to pick up upon. And absolutely not least, last but not least rather, Wynand, could you just tell us who you are?
Hi, yes, also very excited to be here. I'm a product manager. I work for Virgin Media O2 Business, specifically in the unified communications category for probably the last sort of give or take 10 years. So yeah, very interested in my colleagues' view on some of the topics of discussion today.
And look, I'm going to stick with you. I'm sure that we will get your colleagues' views, but I'm going to stick with you on this first question because the title kind of alludes, I think, to something that we can't ignore. How do we make hybrid working work? There's been a lot of chat about the future of work, but it does feel now that hybrid working has been almost thrust upon organisations, whether they wanted to be flexible or whether they wanted to have an in-office culture. Do you think that you are an enthusiastic or a reluctant convert to hybrid working?
That's quite a tough question, right? So I would say I'm erring on the enthusiastic side because I think with hybrid working, not necessarily remote working all the time, but a good mix of in the office and out of the office. I think it does bring some good benefits to organizations that potentially drives faster decision making. It increases just collaboration, but more importantly, it's just speaking from my own experience, it helps a lot on the productivity front. Prior to lockdown, lots of time in the office, and you're being pulled from one meeting to another, and you very rarely had time just by yourself just to get through and get some of the detailed work done. So for me personally, finding that I can between the office and working from home, going for those collaborative sessions, meet people face to face, do a bit of strategizing, planning, etc. But then when I'm back at my desk here, I can just get cracking and get a lot of work done. So yeah, from my side, I'd err on the enthusiastic side, I'd say.
You're touching there, or beginning to touch on questions, I suppose, around productivity, around well-being and health and mental health, perhaps. But parking those for a moment, just out of interest, David and Danette, there's been a huge amount of investment, if we're talking about technology in particular, into tools to allow us to make the most of hybrid working. What benefits have you seen to your business from some of those investments made, say, over the last 18 months? David, if I start with you.
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, so I'm working for a company that was born out of the COVID era, right? So Britishvolt have not known anything other than a diverse workforce and having to rely on technology. If the technology hadn't been there, Britishvolt wouldn't be where we are now. But certainly from a previous life, we were all, as a world, we've been thrust into this cultural change, right? And it is a cultural change, and I think digital technologies have had to keep up to service that, to keep industry and commerce going. Right. Without that, we would not have been able to continue as an economy worldwide. So I don't know what you think, Danette.
Danette, I mean, you mentioned in your introduction that innovation has potentially been part of the role that you've taken. Is it the same organisation? I mean, obviously it's difficult for you to answer because you joined in December, but is it the same organisation that you would have joined if it hadn't been for the pandemic? I mean, how dramatic an impact has that been on a bank?
Well, I think it's accelerated it completely. I mean, the whole concept of the workplace has changed forever, really. You know, it's no longer somewhere you go. It's somewhere where your employees choose to be, whether it's at home, in the office, or on the move. And I think this is a fantastic, it's almost been like a contingency or a disaster recovery exercise that has, that's tested everyone's ability to be productive. And for us, we've moved to the cloud, we're using Teams, the collaboration tools. Our staff are able to work seamlessly. And we now have technology and the innovative tools at Microsoft. I say Microsoft because that's what we've been using over the last 9 months. Is it's been able to, allow our staff to access their systems. It's good performance, and we've also, introduced zero trust security models, and that all gives them an opportunity to collaborate, to continue to deliver the great service, and be working in a resilient, secure system so that they can operate as best they can. So I'm very much enthusiastic of this sort of moving away from the virtual, but now trying to encourage them towards this more hybrid working.
So look, I'm hearing lots of positives, good performance, collaboration, there's enthusiasm there. Wynand, at the very top, you talked about the fact that you felt from your own experience it's been good for productivity. Has it been good for productivity? Let's be honest here. Has the hybrid environment bred better productivity from staff? And I think, Wynand, if I come back to you initially, because I suppose you made that comment that it had been good for you.
Yes, I mean it's definitely been good for me. I'm sure there is a broad spectrum of people out there, and some we know that everybody's not the same, and different people prefer different things, and just thrive off different energies, right? Some people might enjoy just working in the office and getting things done and bouncing off the walls, and other people might much more prefer just sitting in a very quiet office undisturbed just to get some work done. So I think that there's some interesting facts there. We've also done a study recently where, out of the respondents, 47% said that they did feel an uplift in productivity and got more done between the sort of remote work and hybrid work. So that for me is a good indicator, but, it's always useful to hear, different scenarios and different things.
David, you said you were born out of this particular environment. I mean, how are you measuring productivity in your business?
So not me, the company, but yeah, you're right.
Sorry, yes. We're absolutely the company.
So yeah, absolutely. So if I think about the term hybrid working, I would say it's hybrid office location, right? Because work is what you do, not where you go. And I think so. A couple of areas I think about around this is certainly around our ability to think differently about where and who we attract in terms of talent. So because of a hybrid location, it doesn't really matter where you are. Right now in IT. We're used to having globally or geographically dispersed teams. It's by nature of the industry, but certainly companies such as manufacturing companies who would usually traditionally have folks on site, right? They've invested a lot in real estate, so you would expect boots on the ground, and I think that has definitely changed, and the expectation of folks in the workplace has definitely changed. Folks expect, dare I say, demand a more flexible working pattern.
If I just stick on that theme then and pick that up with you, because As I understand it, you're a regional business. Often regional businesses have moved to a certain part of the country to tap into perhaps a talent market. Maybe it's a big university town or something along those lines. There's been a lot of talk during the pandemic and coming out of it of hybrid environments and flexible working environments leveling the playing field when it comes to talent. But is that double-edged in that, yeah, all right, you could have a regional business, but perhaps those people who, that talent market that you're tapping into can now be picked off by players from overseas who want to attract them too?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we part of our philosophy at Britishvolt is inclusion and diversity, and if we think about what we're actually offering our workforce and potential workforce and talent to come and join us in a market that is thin on the ground in some skill areas, right? We can compete globally for certain roles. Yes, we are regional in terms of where we're building our gigafactory and where we're having our offices, but what that allows us to do is to bring talent from anywhere and build skills to be able to offer employment locally.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just interesting, isn't it? Because often a business, I suppose, like yours would have built up partnerships with universities and local organisations in that regard. And I imagine that's still just as important, but there might be a slight weakening of that kind of geographical tie.
Yeah, potentially. We're very much committed to enrich the areas in which we have a footprint. And we're doing that in a lot of areas, including building skills and inclusivity for all parts of the community. We're doing great things around that. But certainly in some specialist skills, when you think about battery chemistry and that kind of design side, then there are certain areas of the world where those skills are present, and a lot of areas where those are not. Yeah. If we are able to offer a really creative working pattern, then the barriers are no longer there, right? And we can bring in skills from anywhere in the world to create skills in the areas in which we need them in the UK.
Just as a straw poll, anyone jump in on this? Are younger people keener to get back into the office? Is that a really sweeping statement that's not accurate? But it's definitely something that I seem to be seeing anecdotally in my own organisation. Yeah, David.
So I think a pendulum has definitely swung over the last 18 months, right? If you think back, that seems an awful long time ago now when we were told to go home, right? And for that next, I think 6 to 12 months, we really relished, or a lot of folks really relished the fact that we had this new work-life balance, right? We could to address a lot of the points that Danette's made, especially when it was a really great summer, which helped, right? So we could get out on the bikes at lunchtime, but we could be working till 9-10 o'clock at night. But we chose that, right? And because we were very clear, and I think what it has done as well as leaders, had to be very clear about what we expect in terms of the output of our people, right? But we needed that anyway when we were all together in an open office, right? That hasn't changed. It's just we've had to really focus on that, and not just from a control point of view at all. It's so our team members understand their role and how they are contributing to the overall success of the company, right? And that's really important.
A last point, we are short on time, but Wynand, I'm going to come back to you on this one. There is an increasing amount of research now and literature that's actually being derived from the real life examples of what this is like. What considerations do you think leaders should make to get the best out of a hybrid working environment?
So in terms of the key considerations, there are a number. I think, first and foremost is investing in the right technology, be that physical technology as well as cloud-based technology. I mean, Danette touched on earlier about, it's not just the collaboration capability, but security is also another important aspect. You've also got to think about the broader digital direction that you're going to take your business into, and how that ties back in with things like customer experience and how your employees treat your customers, etc. So I think there's a big consideration there just on making the right investments. I think you briefly touched on it before in the conversation on how do you strike the balance between productivity and well-being, and prevent burnout on many back-to-back calls. So therefore, I think as well your hybrid working policies need to be super clear, and that's been echoed back in some of the researches that we've seen. But yeah, there are loads of other things like perhaps your office space. If you had the sort of sardine can environment, it's probably a bit of an overstatement, but when people then do come into the office the 1 or 2 days a week, creating space for them to be more productive, be more creative, what will go a long way. But then there's also other things like managing. And I'll end on this one, but I think managing company culture and managing people's networks, I think it's good to look to create more social events and meetings to bring people together, and so people can foster relationships. I think over COVID, a lot of people have just not worked together at all, and it's probably a bit awkward now, everybody coming back to the office together. So I think anything that would help build back those relationships again would be a good thing.
Just quickly, before we do wrap up the session, obviously we've talked about productivity, we've talked about health and well-being, we've talked about the need to kind of try and wonder about how we foster talent. Could you each give me one kind of takeaway that you'd leave for the audience watching on one of those subjects? Danette, if I start with you.
Of course. So I think that leaders need to support their staff to create digital workplaces that really support them, that help shape their vision by deploying the right IT solutions and services to enable them to really thrive in a fast changing world.
David?
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for SMEs to really engage in flexible working to attract talent wherever they want to attract talent.
And lastly, Wynand.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. One thing, key takeaway for me is really try and work on the work-life balance, and block time for yourself, and make sure your policies are clear. But achieving that balance for me is always the key one.
Look, thank you all three of you for making some time this afternoon to spend it with us here. So thank you to Wynand, to David, and to Danette.
Thank you.
And thank you to the audience for joining us for this episode of Around the WaterCooler. There is plenty more discussion on the CIO WaterCooler site, so please do stay, have a look around and browse.